the snow globe metaphor can be very helpful, and in practicing mindfulness and giving thought to the power of observing the activity of the mind, we can begin to really probe a little bit more deeply into what's really going on and the mechanisms underlying this shift. And so here's a question that is probing a little bit into that, with some questions around why it is that observing the activity of the mind can, in fact, settle the metaphorical snow globe of thoughts and feelings, and the way they influence the sensations in the body, and each other. And so here, as a reminder, we have our snow globe, and life is humming along, and things are pretty good, and we're engaged, and we're thinking, and we're feeling, and then all of a sudden something happens that's really like, oh my gosh, it throws us off. It's unwanted, it's unexpected, it's undesirable. And before we know it, I think that's the key, before we're even aware this is happening, or to some extent aware of the way it's affecting us, it becomes very difficult to see clearly what's taking place. The thoughts and the feelings begin swirling and spiraling around. We could say there's like this internal snowstorm, very hard to see, can be very agitating, very scary, and confusing. And one of the mindfulness, opportunities that we're learning is to, in those moments, actually observe this activity. It may not be our natural inclination because we're so inclined to want to do something about it, but the doing in some ways can be exacerbating it. So how does this observing, why is it useful? And so the question that's asked is, how can being aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations lighten the snow that is falling if the snow represents our thoughts, feelings, and sensations? So this is a clever phrasing, and I think it's tapping into a distinction that is easily overlooked, that I touched on a few moments ago, between being aware of our thoughts, feelings, sensations, and thinking about them. When the snow globe is shaking, inevitably, I think it's because we're resisting what's taking place. When things happen, whether they are, pleasant or unpleasant, whether they are, useful or not, if we're not resisting it, we tend to not have so much snow globe activity. We might have thoughts about it, we might have feelings about it, so there's thoughts and there's feelings, to be sure, but there's not necessarily that agitation and that confusion, or that, the emotional tumult that can come along, which is, I think, occasioned by resisting. This is an important reminder that it's not the thing that's happening, but the way we're relating to the thing. And here we're zeroing in on resistance, and how it is that being aware might, in fact, be taking the foot off the brake of the ways that we are resisting and resisting and resisting. So just by taking our foot off that brake, just by observing the activity of the mind, we are resisting less. And hence, since it's the resisting that's shaking things up, if we're resisting less, things can have an opportunity to begin to settle. And so it might be that this question, how can being aware of our thoughts and feelings and sensations lighten the snow? The confusion might be, or one aspect of the confusion might be, that we're actually using awareness here, which is the right term, but what we're actually meaning is thinking about. How can thinking more about thoughts, feelings, and sensations help to settle the snow? And in fact, I would say that much of the time, especially when we're resisting our experience, thinking about it is just scrambling with a lot of confusion and a lot of agitation, and maybe even in that confusion, not even thinking about the thing that's actually the true source of whatever it is that is problematic, that is further shaking the snow globe. So it's the thinking about when it's born out of resisting and trying to fix something, that can actually be doing more shaking. So there's a big difference between how can thinking about our thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and how can being aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Now, when we're not resisting so much, and the snow is, nicely settling and, nicely floating, then we can think about our internal thoughts, and, obviously internal, our thoughts and our feelings, and we can begin to think about and reflect on and analyze and investigate. We can do that, but we're doing that from a more steady state. But when the snow globe is going, it is very challenging to do that, and we might in fact end up thinking about, meaning fixing, analyzing, problem solving, when in fact we're not in a good place for doing that. And also, in terms of just why it is that, if that is the case, in terms of what might have been intended with the use of the word awareness, we're aware, is that, we are so accustomed to thinking and problem solving and analyzing, and we're not necessarily that accustomed to stepping back, so to speak, and just bringing the lens of observation and awareness to our experience. That the practices we're doing will help us see more clearly, better understand and intuit what it means to be in that more observationally rich state. And then, of course, there'll be times when we are observing, and then we will realize we're observing, or had been observing, and then we'll be thinking about the fact that we're aware, and they're thinking about having been aware, and the moment earlier when we were just pretty much just aware and observing can make the thinking and the awareness sometimes rub awfully close to each other. They are, though, in many ways quite different, and that's what we're exploring when we practice mindfulness, and we're turning this capacity we have to be aware towards our own internal experience.